Skies tonight were pretty hazy, not super ideal for observing, but really felt like getting out under the stars tonight. So pulled out the 10-inch Dobsonian and set my sights on M27 Dumbbell Nebula to give it a shot, doing some drawings. Seeing was like, I would say 2 out of 5, maybe. Pretty poor. With closer magnification at stars, there's quite a bit of wobble and undulation going on. Transparency, yeah, halfway up. The best star I could see was probably Albireo, which is magnitude 3.2. So yeah, overall not the best of nights even for the Boreal 7-8 skies that I generally have in the Bay Area, but was still able to get a decent amount of observation going on. It just took a little bit longer to stare at the object before I could really make out any of the details. So I started out the night with, just a really long session of looking at the object, and I noticed that it really felt like there were kind of these two um, central bright areas here, slowing down just to show that I really soaked up the Conte onto the smudge tool here, and then it was just really lightly pushing it down to get the general shape of the nebula that I was seeing, and then spreading out some of that Conte to get a little bit of the overall general haze. But really, the goal right now is to just get the general shape of it. I'm using the side of the smudge tool here to just try and get a little bit of softening through the overall image. Switching back to full red light for a little bit just so I could get a little better view, and trying to get the general shaping of kind of the broader area around the bright spots through here. It really seemed like it did spread out a fair amount. You can see I'm using the side of the smudge tool that doesn't have any Conte on it for most of the smudging, and then I'll switch back over to the other side from time to time just to kind of get a little extra material on there if I need to. And here's some regular speed stuff just to show kind of how I would use the side of the smudge tool to really soften out some of those areas and can define some of the specificity. Oh, got a little too much there. Just erase that out. I also use the side of my hand just to, it's hard to tell which side has the Conte and which doesn't, so I would smudge it on my hand just so I was using the right side. I'm wondering if I should maybe mark it or something like that, just so it's a little easier to tell between which side has Conte smudged all over it and which side is cleaner. Taking a little pass, just cleaning up. I think that as I was smudging through, it really felt like it was getting a little too wide. Through the eyepiece, it definitely felt like more of an oblong, a really long oval type shape through there in general. And getting a little bit more time at the eyepiece. It really was taking me a little bit of extra time to see all the subtle features within there. As I went through on this pass of observing, I felt like I really noticed kind of like a ring that was circling around. It was a broken ring, but it was sort of on the lower half of the nebula. Oh, one other thing I was trying this time around, since I'm using a reflector telescope, and the images flopped both horizontally and vertically, I figured, well, maybe I'll try and draw it into the sketchbook upside down so that when I flip it over, it's the actual image. So at this point right now, I wanted to get a little more of the like really see some of the details within the nebula cloud, but my eyes had been kind of tainted by the brightness of the amber light. So I switched over to the red light, kept it as dim as I possibly could, and just took a little bit of time to start plotting out the stars. around the nebula, and hopefully allowing my eyes to kind of settle into the night vision a little bit better, so that I would be able to see some of the more specific details that I was noticing on my first pass of looking through the telescope. I've been using that black charcoal pencil almost like an eraser for this kind of stuff. It works fairly well. I mean, when you look at the sketchbook in the light, you can definitely see the difference of the black of the charcoal on the black of the paper, but it doesn't bother me too much. For whatever reason, too, the ink on that pen really shines as a almost bluish on the video here, but it's almost identical white to the nebula of the pencil in Conti. So now that my eyes have adjusted, I was able to just spend a little bit of time looking and really seeing some of the specific shaping within the nebula, and switched over to the general's pencil here to mark in some of these more specific kind of defined details within here. I'm going a little bit broader, a little bit more contrasty with this at first, with the understanding that I'll go over it again with the smudge tool and kind of soften these things out. Again, even with the red light though, it was difficult to make out some of the specificity. So I was taking quite a bit of time in between sections here to really observe and get my eyes back into a decent spot where I could see the details. Yeah, for whatever reason, tonight was definitely, well, I mean, I understand it was definitely not the most ideal seeing conditions. So it was definitely taking a little bit longer than usual. Although, I gotta say, even with the less than ideal conditions, I was very surprised with what I could see. It felt to me like there was fleeting moments of very specific shaping. And I've looked at the dumbbell a couple times now in this past year. Almost always it feels just sort of like evenly flat and soft. But I don't know if I've ever actually spent quite as much time as I did tonight looking at it as specifically. So now that I got the general shapes of those bits in there, I'm going in and kind of defining a few more areas with the smudge tool. And then um, trying to kind of soften it out to a place where it doesn't feel like it was quite as contrasty and a little more accurate to what I was seeing in the telescope. Using the eraser can definitely be helpful to kind of just like get back some of those like darker shadow spots as well. I find that using my fingers sometimes is a nice way to kind of soften out areas. There's something about it too. Maybe it's just like a little bit of the oils in the finger and on your skin or whatever that kind of sets the Conte a little bit better as well as opposed to the smudge tool. Um, it's like a much more subtle um, blending and softening compared to the smudge tool. At this point, just getting in a few more of the more specific stars here. Um, just finishing up some of the details on these things that I didn't quite get to on that first round. All of this stuff was being done with an O3 filter as well. So the stars were definitely not nearly as bright and clear as usual. And tonight in particular, I was not really able to see M27 at all without the O3. A lot of times I will take out the O3 filter at the end just to plot in the stars a little more specifically, add some of the dimmer ones, the fainter ones that I'm not able to see with the filter in. Today I figured, I don't know, it didn't seem super necessary, and I felt like I had enough specificity within the ones that I was seeing that I didn't bother. Overall, it was a pretty slow process in retrospect right now, just because I was spending so much time at the eyepiece, really trying to get my eyes to adjust to the um, the brightness of the sky. But now I think I was at the point where I felt pretty comfortable with where the nebula was. There was definitely a lot of kind of um, cloudy, wispy things in the nearby area, so I wanted to get some of that in there and define it. You can see here on the regular speed film, just getting the shaping in and then using the side of the smudge tool to kind of soften it all out. Very, very lightly. Another little final pass of just defining out some of the areas, softening a few spots, and using the smudge and eraser both combined to kind of like pull off some of the little excess bits, softening out the sides just a little bit more to reduce the contrasts. And when I wanted to play around a little bit with like a different way of showing the orientation. Saw this on Cloudy Nights post of one of the other astro sketchers, and I thought it was pretty nice way of showing it. Nice clean way of showing the directions. So I'm stealing it, and that's about it. Looking back at the image now, I feel like it's pretty representational of what I was seeing. I'm not super happy with the overall final image of it. I think there's something about it that just feels a little bit too chalky, a little too rough on the page. I could have maybe drawn it a little bit larger. But overall, happy. I mean, it was a fun night, and I was very excited to see what I could actually see. Comparing it to some images of photographs of the Dumbbell Nebula afterwards, and positioning it in the same orientation, I was pretty surprised at how accurate it did feel. It does feel. So that made me pretty confident that I was at least not making up what I was seeing in the telescope.